Hi, this is Ableton Bible and welcome to the Electronic Music Production Fundamentals course covering bass. This course does cover some fairly in-depth and advanced techniques. However, we have written this course so that we cover the basics first and then we go on to the more advanced stuff. So if you're a beginner, you should still be able to keep up with what's going on. Throughout this course, we'll predominantly be using the stock Ableton devices. However, we've done some research into the common plugins that many of the successful artists have been using. So we're going to be using some of these plugins throughout the course, showing you how to use them and going through some of their advantages and disadvantages. This course is just short of 7 hours long, split into 13 different videos. And we've done this because it allows us enough time to teach you the fundamentals behind these skills and techniques that we're teaching you. Rather than just teaching you a specific way of doing things, we're trying to teach you the reasons why certain producers will use certain techniques. So this way you can apply this to your own productions as and when you need to. So in the first video we're going to have a bit of an introduction to the bass and look at its compositional role within a record. Then we're going to look at bass monitoring and we're going to look at the room and room modes and how to treat these room modes with acoustic treatment. We're going to look at monitor types and how to set them up correctly in the room, listening levels and how to set them correctly, and then how to reference a track properly and different metering tools. Next, we're going to look at keys and scales and the basics of the keyboard, as well as the chromatic scale and the diatonic scales, such as the major and the minor scale. And then finally, we're going to look at intervals and scale degrees. Next, we're going to look at the rhythm and groove and what defines the rhythm within a track and the groove pool, how to program typical rhythms such as driving versus syncopated rhythms, and also how things like note length, decay time, metrical positioning, velocity and pitch affect the groove. Then we're going to look at how we can extract a drum track's groove to a bass, and finally we'll finish up rhythm and groove with some different groove programming techniques. Next, we're going to move on to tuning, which is going to cover using a tuner and a spectrum analyzer, different methods of detecting the key of a track, tuning samples, micro-tuning and the beating effect. Then we'll look at the roles of the bass, such as underpinning chords, supporting a lead, working in contrary to a lead, or being the actual lead itself. We'll look at the difference between melodic complexity and rhythmical interest, and also scale degrees and tendency tones, and how certain notes are magnetized to the root. We'll take a look at consonance and dissonance and strong and weak notes, and then we'll look at how we can build a melody from scratch with and without chords, and a few different techniques that we can use to do this. Then we'll take a look at embellishments and advanced melody techniques such as passing notes, arpeggios, octaves, note repeats, contours, call and response, and layering timbres to form call and response melodies. We'll also take a look at paired phrasing, fills, cadences, riffs and cells, and how we can modulate smaller loops to create interest. Next, we'll move on to modes and accidentals, where we'll go into the difference between the 3 different minor scales, explain what a mode is and how to get the formula for the different modes, and how we can use the interval changes to create tension and resolution within our composition. And then finally, we'll explain accidentals and how to use them within your track. Next, we're going to talk about bass synthesis, and we'll start off with the bass synthesis basics and the different waveforms and their uses. Then we're going to make 5 different tech house patches on various different plugins, and then we'll have a quick look at different techniques to emulate different basses. Then we're going to synthesize some fairly generic basses. So we're going to look at the best practices for creating a sub bass in Native Instruments Massive. Then we're going to look at how we can make a generic Moog bass using Sylenth. Next, we're going to look at techno basses, and we're going to make 2 different basses. In the first bass, we're going to explain the white noise technique in Operator and how we can create those low, rumbling, indistinct bass sounds. And in the second bass, we're going to make a sidechain reverb bass. And then we're going to quickly look at the relationship between the kick and the bass, and we can try and unmask them slightly, as well as the importance of microtuning and modulation using tools such as the LFO Max for Live tool. Next, we're going to take a look at acid bass synthesis, and we're going to make a 303 style acid bass in Operator. And then I'm going to show you how you can translate that technique between different plugins, and we're going to make the exact same patch in Sylenth just to show you how you can transfer that skill. Then we're going to go into bass processing and mixing, and we're going to show the techniques on the synthesized basses that we've made. So we'll be covering panning in stereo image, phase, frequency splitting, the kick and the bass relationship, surgical EQ and unmasking, dynamic EQ, and coloration with vintage EQ. And in the second video, we're going to cover a range of different techniques, methods and plugins for sidechaining and their advantages and disadvantages. We're going to cover compression, saturation and distortion, and then parallel and bus processing. And then finally, we're going to finish off with some alternative configurations and some advanced parallel processing. So in this course, we've got a lot of information to squeeze into the next 7 hours. So let's get cracking, and I'll see you in the video.